Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, Lose Life Pearls, where I am just reflecting on my life revelations. I'm just wanting to remember where I'm at in life right now, and I want to be sure to remember this for my son as he grows and my future children. So if you're watching this, good morning. It is the morning time, and I'm the only one awake, so I will be talking a little bit quietly. This morning, I want to talk about some for sure ways to make an argument worse. We're going to come across arguments in life, whether you're a single person, whether you're somebody in a relationship. If you do decide to combine your life with somebody else's, arguments are definitely going to happen. You're two different people, two different minds, think different ways, and obviously no one is perfect. Everybody has flaws, and it's going to affect your relationship in different ways. So learning how to argue is such an important discipline for your relationship. It's important to go into every argument with the mindset that you care about this person. Nothing is personal. We're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but feelings will be indirectly hurt because arguments can be hard sometimes. It's hard to hear hard things. If you've made any kind of commitment to this person, or if they're just somebody that you really care about, it's important to always just remind yourself that you unconditionally love this person, and this argument is something that you need to go through for the betterment of your relationship. Go ahead and when you are not in that emotional state of arguing, pre-plan out what your standards are for your argument. When you're in the middle of an argument, that is probably the worst time that you can lay out those standards. I'll explain it more later. Go ahead and lay out your ground rules when both of you are calm and in a good place, so that you can refer to those rules as you go into the nitty-gritty of your arguments. So we'll begin with one of the most obvious ways that you can definitely make an argument worse. If you are ready to make your argument worse, go ahead and resort to name calling. We can all agree that that is not going to be constructive in any way, shape, or form. So if you are just done with the argument and you really do not care about the outcome and you're just ready to hurt the other person, go ahead and resort to name calling. The next thing that you can do is go ahead and recall your past resolved arguments. Recalling an unresolved argument is a different story. If there's things that have been going on that has not been talked about all the way that might relate to this topic, it is important to bring up those things. We don't want to just continue to brush things under the rug, especially repeated patterns. But if there are arguments that have been resolved, that the two of you have argued about and you got through it and you apologized and took that next step and moved forward, there is no point in re-bringing it up and having the same argument again, especially if it does not have anything to do with the current argument that you are both talking about. We easily start spinning out of what was that original thing we were arguing about in the first place. What even was it? Now we're rehashing out all of these past arguments that are making us emotional, that are starting to just hurt both people's feelings because we already had this argument. Now we're having it again, and it is not constructive because we are just rehashing something that we already supposedly resolved. Go ahead, recall the past resolved arguments if you're ready to make your argument worse. The next thing that you can do is also go ahead and use this as an opportunity to scrutinize every flaw about that person. And go ahead and do that every moment that you get the chance. So every moment that the person says something that makes you think of the next thing that you remember that's a flaw about that person, go ahead and bring it up at this time. You're bound to make your argument worse. The next thing that you can do is, if you're not at the point of interruption yet and you're waiting your turn to speak, instead of listening to the other person and responding to what they're saying, go ahead and just blurt out that next thing that you were wanting to say. So that will show the other person that you don't really care about exactly what it is they're saying, but there's clearly a lot of things that you're needing to get on the table. This is the moment to do that, to make your argument worse. At this point, we've lost sight of why we're here to argue. Going into an argument, both people are in a disagreement about something. That is why the argument exists. If this was just a conversation between two people who agreed, then it would not be an argument. You're on the same side, you're on the same team, but you both have opposing views, and we're trying to talk through that. So if you're at the point where you're ready to make your argument worse, stop listening to the opposing view. Don't respond to their points. Just start blurting out the points that you're ready to make. So if you're not already there, go ahead and also start interrupting. This will drive the point home that you are not here to listen to that person anymore and you're just wanting to get out your points. If you're ready to take it to the next level of making sure that your argument is worse, go ahead and start yelling over the other person, because clearly they're not hearing you, right? So go ahead and you can pretty much set in stone that when you resort to yelling and interrupting, you're bound to make the argument worse and not constructive at that point, and nobody is responding to what anybody else is saying, because nobody can actually hear what the other person is saying. All we're doing is hearing the points that we're needing to make. The next thing that you can also do to make the argument worse is to also just resort to cursing and just using the rude words that you can. That's key to making your argument worse. You can also begin responding with sarcasm. And then to kind of add the cherry on top, you can start your arguments while you've been drinking or while you're really tired. So go ahead and start these arguments while you're in the middle of having the time that started out as a good time, maybe with some alcohol. Start the argument then when you're not thinking your best. Definitely start this as you're really tired, maybe really late at night, right before bed. That's also the most ideal time to make your argument worse. So if you care about your relationships, you'll care about the way you argue, and you will set standards for yourself and how you want to be in arguments. Nobody is perfect, but it's very important that you try your best for as long as you can to hold yourself to these standards, and as you see yourself not meeting these standards, call it quits. If you do not want to make the argument worse, but like I said beforehand, lay out some ground rules. So there might be some key words that both of you agree on, or that both of you understand, that when you say it in the middle of an argument, it gives both of you a chance to stop, see that rule that you're breaking, backpedal a little bit, regather your thoughts. It gives the other person and gives you guys a chance to remember why you're arguing, what you're arguing about, the point you're trying to get across, and keeping it constructive. Some things you can say, some keywords you could say can be tone. Just the second that, the sarcasm starts coming out, we can just say tone. That could be a keyword. Or language, if those curse words start coming out. Or name calling. Okay, name calling is starting to happen. This is not constructive. Name calling. So some things like that are referring to all of these things that make an argument worse. You can have some keywords. Say the argument starts in the middle of alcohol. Say that. Say, I'm not having this conversation right now while you've been drinking. We can talk about it later. Or if this conversation is happening right before bed and you're really tired, just lay out that standard. Say, I am not having this conversation while we are both really tired. We'll talk about it tomorrow, or we'll talk about it later. When you start detecting that point in the argument where things are becoming petty, now we're just scrutinizing one another's flaws, just say that. Things are getting petty. Things are getting petty. What are we arguing about? One of the biggest things that you can do is know when to be done. You might not be able to completely resolve the conflict at this point. But when you realize you're in that point of the argument where you're doing all the things to make the argument worse, you're not doing any of the constructive things to respectfully get through that conversation you're having with this person that you care about, and you realize there's no point of return. We're doing all the things repetitively now. Just be done and walk away. That does not mean that you will brush this under the rug. It just means that at this point in time, we're hurting each other's feelings, or we are not being constructive, and we will talk about it later. That's one of the best things that you can do. A common misconception that I hear a lot is that you have to finish every argument as it's transpiring. That phrase, don't let the sun go down upset, or don't let the sun go down in the middle of an argument, I'm actually going to disagree with that. Because when we get to this point where we're doing all of the things I just said that make an argument worse, at that point, if we're letting the sun go down and we're in the middle of the night now, things are escalating, we're getting tired, we're not being constructive, you're just gonna go in circles, we're just gonna hurt feelings, we're gonna start wounding each other if we're not careful, and you shouldn't be okay with that. Hopefully the both of you love and respect each other enough. Hopefully you care about each other enough to not be okay with lowering your standards to hurt that other person's feelings. And if this is an argument with a coworker or somebody where you're not in a relationship, and you're not, loving each other unconditionally, then hopefully you're being more professional and you're not having all these things to make an argument worse. But a lot of the time, the ugliest arguments are with the people that we're closest to, that we are more ourselves around. And unfortunately, those are the people that we hurt the most and the deepest. So if you care about your relationship, take some time, lay out some standards, lay out some rules, lay out some keywords. If you're really confident in your relationship and you're really open to scrutiny and self-reflection, even maybe agree to record your arguments beforehand. Do not just whip that out in the middle of an argument and say, I'm gonna record this. Beforehand, agree. Do I have your permission to record our arguments if we get into one? If you both agree, even maybe start doing that, and you can really reflect that way. But just remember who you're talking to. Remember that you love and care about them. Remember what the argument is about in the first place. And as long as you do those things, we'll get through the argument okay, even though it will be hard. And there will be positive things that come from this argument then if we keep those things at the forefront of our mind. So I hope that this was a constructive video. Thank you for listening.